Perspective. A fundamental skill that most beginner artists tend to struggle with. But it doesn't have to be that way. With a ruler and a basic understanding of how to use it, you can pretty much bring yourself to be better in drawing perspectives. Firstly, what is perspective? It is a technique of making 3D objects appear in 2D, like on paper. There's 3 main types of perspective, but the type that we will learn in this video is linear perspective, especially 1-point and 2-point perspective. To understand better how they work, let's first learn about the guides that help us create them. First is the horizon line. It is where the horizon is, the line where we stop seeing things. The placement of this line is up to the artist to decide. The higher the horizon line, the higher the point of view. The lower it goes, the lower the view becomes. It can even go outside the canvas. Next is the vanishing point. It is where all mutually parallel lines converge. The point should glide along the horizon line. There can be 1 vanishing point, which makes a drawing 1-point perspective. There can be 2 vanishing points, thus the 2-point perspective. There can be 3, 4, 5, and 6. Lastly, the lines. The converging lines, which has a meaning, and their uses vary by the number of vanishing points. In 1-point perspective, the only lines that follow the converging lines are the lines in the side. That means in a cube sample, the side faces of the cube are the only faces that follow it. And by side, that also includes the top and the bottom sides. Meanwhile, the front view just follows the vertical and horizontal lines. So with that in mind, let's look at a painting and analyze it. As you can see, in the sides of the buildings, the lines follow the converging lines, while the front faces of the buildings follow the vertical and horizontal lines. And that's because this painting is in 1-point perspective. But what if the painting looks like this? This is 2-point perspective, having 2 points that has 2 sets of converging lines. So what do the lines mean now? It now means that the other side has to follow the other converging line, making both faces now follow a converging line. In this perspective, the horizontal lines are no longer significant outside the horizon line, but the vertical lines stay the same. Not in 3-point perspective. Now let's go back to the painting I've showed earlier. When we put the perspective lines back, we now see that there are now 2 faces being formed from the converging line. One looking from one side and the other looking from the other side. And that's how we understand that this is a 2-point perspective. But what about this face? Well, this face is special. You know, just like in any rules, there is always an exception. This face does not follow any lines because this face is diagonal. This train model looks like this when viewed from the top. The front view and the side view align, and this is the diagonal. And along with curves and text, they should not be following the converging lines in order to maintain their shape. So, how do we put them in perspective? Here's a trick that I do. These shapes don't align, but squares and rectangles do. So what I do is I wrap them around in those shapes so it would be easier to put them in perspective. Overall, perspective is a technique that makes a 3D object appear on 2D. And as long as you follow the lines, you are free to choose whatever angle you wish to draw. Anyways, please follow for Shaman on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you have time, might as well hit subscribe and like the video. If you have questions, feel free to comment down below. And lastly, don't forget to share this to your friends as this might help them. And this is For Shaman, signing out. Goodbye.